Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. In today's class, we will be discussing the history of English literature, and this is going to be the very first lecture of history of English literature for BS first semester. As far as the English history is concerned, definitely it has a huge history, but in today's lecture we will be discussing Anglo-Saxon or the Old English period. So before understanding the history, we have to understand what is meant by literature, and what is specifically or particularly English literature. And then we have to understand the origin of English language, that from where the language came, and the historical context of Anglo-Saxon. Then the cross current of social and political structure, that how was this society, what was the structure socially and politically of this particular I would say Anglo-Saxons. And then we have to understand the religious impacts and spirit of Christianity, how they involved in religious discussion and they became Christian. Then we have to understand Anglo-Saxon literature, their themes and the forms and style of Anglo-Saxon literature. And definitely again it comes to the oral tradition, which we will discuss at the end. Remember students, one thing, whenever it comes to literature, so literature is not something very scientific, or I would say that is very rigid. It is very vast and a very wide term, so everybody can understand or can explain literature according to his or her own understanding. But when it comes to literature, this is how it can be defined. So literature is an art of writing and speaking. So art of writing and speaking by express ideas, emotions through language. So through language, whether it is spoken or written, you are expressing your ideas, or you can say that the writers, they are expressing their ideas. So it is wholly solely related to the language which can be expressed through it, whether it is written language or spoken language. Then it comes to the variety of literature. Then it has different genres, including it has poetry, prose, drama, non-fiction, you can see essays, articles, many other things which are in written. And when it comes to spoken, so you do poetry and you sing lyrics. You can say that both spoken as well as written material, which are poems, which are prose, or you can say proses, or dramas, or non-fictions whatsoever. So they come under the umbrella term of literature. So literature is always about expressing your emotions, your ideas, whatever you are perceiving or you're getting from your society, and when you're talking about it. But it is both in spoken as well as written form. Now when it particularly comes to English literature, remember that English literature, it is specifically about English, means all the works which are written are spoken in English language. So literature in general, it can be about any language, it can be about any society's literature. But when it comes to English literature, it means particularly the language which is English, and the literature which has been discussed or written in English. So English literature refers to the body of written work, the lifeblood of master's soul, produced in English language. It spans over a vast period of early writings from the Anglo-Saxon era to modern works, the contemporary time, including poetry, novel, essays, and plays, dramas, whatsoever. So all these are included in English literature. So literary context is deeply influenced by historical, social, political, and the environment, the social, you can say the social environment, or the society's you can say perception. So every writer is influenced by his or her, you can say, history, the social norms, values, and political happenings in the society or the environment, the social, or how the people used to get or perceive things in that very society. So every writer is influenced by his or her society. So according to the society, or most of the time it says that literature is the reflection of society. So whatever is happening in the society, writers are writing about it, and that is how we understand that. For example, we are living in 21st century, but by reading the books of 15, 14 or 13th centuries people, what we say that okay, it was the society, or and this is how the people used to think. So it means that even living in this current era, we are able to understand how the people used to think, how the people used to perceive, and how the people used to perform in this society back, decades back, or the centuries back. So it is the literature who tells us about the people, about the mindset of the society. Now, after understanding literature and English language, English literature in particular, we have to understand the origin of English language. Just because we are talking about the history of English literature, and literature is nothing without language, right? Language is the medium of literature, that we get literature through language. So now we have to understand that from where this English language came, or how the English language developed. So definitely when it comes to the development of English language, it roots back on the arrival of Anglo-Saxon in Britain. So it was the time after fall of Rome. Then the people, the Anglo-Saxons, the different tribal groups, they came to Britain. It was the time of 5th century AD, so almost around 5th century AD. So the English language developed by these groups, or by the Anglo-Saxon, the Old English literature. Okay, it evolved from the language spoken by various Germanic tribes, primarily the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. So these were the people who used to speak Old English, and from where this language originated. It is about Old English. Okay, then Old English in its early form is known as Anglo-Saxon. So now we are calling it Old English or English in current era, but at that time it used to be called as Anglo-Saxon. It's heavily influenced by Latin, Norse, due to the interaction with the Romans and Vikings. So these were the people, the group. So they were influenced by Latin language as far as the Norse language. So the English, the Old English, it was influenced by, you can say, these languages. And from where the language came, it came with the Anglo-Saxons, and in Old English period, it used to be called Anglo-Saxons. Now, when it comes to the historical context of Anglo-Saxon era, we are dealing with this particularly. Okay, we are talking about Anglo-Saxons. So what was the historical context of Anglo-Saxons? Now see students, the Anglo-Saxon era, it started in 410 AD to 1066, and so it began after the fall of Roman Empire, when Germanic tribes settled in England. Which tribe? We talked about these different Germanic tribes, right? So they came to England and they settled. This period is marked by the establishment of several small kingdoms, the kingdoms of different, warriors groups, or different tribal groups, you can say. So they were in groups. These Anglo-Saxons, they were in groups, and they are having small kingdoms. Every group has, you can say that, or had its own king, which later unified into the kingdom of England. So all those small groups, before they were in separate, you can say, tribes, at the end they became a great unified kingdom of England. The Anglo-Saxons were initially pagan but converted to Christianity. So they became Christian, their beliefs became changed, had a profound impact on the culture and literature of that time. And this particular and huge change had definitely had a great influence on culture as well as the literature of the time. Now, when we look at the social and political structure of Anglo-Saxons, definitely we just discussed that Anglo-Saxon society was tribal, as well as it was organized around kinship groups. Kinship group means different tribal groups, first group, then second group, then third group, right? kings as well as their warriors. Those were known as thans, you can say, at that very time, they used to fight, and the church played central role in governance. Why the church played central role in governance is, we just discussed that the Anglo-Saxon, they became Christian, they converted to Christianity, and definitely church was a kind of very holy place for them. So all the political events, or you can say the governance system specifically when it comes to making rules, that was done by the church. And church, you can say, it was an active institution at the in that era. The legal system included the concept of virgult compensation for harm. When it comes to virgult, it means that okay, how to compensate if someone harm you, if someone do something bad with your tribe, because there were, we just discussed that okay, there were tribal groups, but those tribal groups were, again, definitely they were in fight, and whatever happened to them, whether it is definitely when, especially when it comes to bad happenings, so how do they compensate it? The people compensation was a kind of, that okay, you have to do the same thing, or the same the level of the harm, you have to do the same thing with the other tribe. Then the people lived in a small agricultural community. As we said that the social and political structure, it was tribal, and it has different kinship groups. Then the society was agricultural society, जिसको हम कहते हैं खेती बाड़ी करना. So the society, they were living in agriculture communities, so the source of income was, you can say, agriculture. When it comes to religion and spread of Christianity, that how the Christianity became a kind of dominant religion of Anglo-Saxon. So before 7th century, the Anglo-Saxon followed a pagan belief system, worshipping gods like Woden and Thor. With the arrival of Christian missionaries, so it is because of these missionaries, you can simply understand, if you want to understand in a simple words, you can say that the kind of Tablighi Jamaat. So Christian missionaries led by figures such as St. Augustine in 597 AD, Christianity began to flourish. Definitely they started practicing Christianity, and they started inviting people to Christianity. So this is how Christianity spread in Anglo-Saxons, and most of them, they started converting into Christianity. The church became a dominant force influencing politics, education, literature, ancient tradition, and culture. Now see, if you want to understand how powerful the church was at that time, you have to understand that the church became dominant force. How? It has a great influence on politics, education, literature, and the ancient tradition, the tradition which used to be followed, or you can say they were the tradition of their forefathers. So church was involved in each and every happening of the society. So church at that time, it was a very powerful institution as well as very dominant force, and it has influenced so many, you can say, institution, whether it is politics, education, literature, or ancient tradition and culture. Definitely it was all about how the society, or the history, the historical context of Anglo-Saxon. Now particularly we are going for the literature, that what type of literature Anglo-Saxon has had produced. Now see, the very dominant work of Anglo-Saxon is Beowulf, right? Beowulf is a character. Okay, so it is the most famous epic poem of Anglo-Saxon period. So Beowulf is an epic poem, remember that. Then it is an epic poem telling the story of Beowulf, a hero who battles the monster Grendel's mother, and the dragon in his later years. So this is the story, the epic poem is about that Beowulf is a great hero, and he battles against monster. Then the poem is filled with the themes of heroism, loyalty, and the inevitable decline of even the greatest warriors. Now see, so this particular poem is all about heroism. You can find loyalty, that the warriors, they are very loyal to their kings, and when it comes to the inevitable decline of even the greatest warriors, those who are the greatest warriors, they also face ending. Then we have the Exeter's book. So in this manuscript, it has, a wide variety of Old English poems, including the Seafarer, including the Wanderer and Riddle. So these are the most prominent works in this particular Exeter's book. So these works delve deep into spiritual reflections, mysteries of life, and harshness of exile. So the particularly all the poems included in this particular book, they are about spiritual reflections, they are about mysteries of life, and the themes are also about the harshness of exile. Then we have Cadman's Hymn. When it comes to Cadman's Hymn, it is one of the earliest recorded Christian poems in English language. Remember one thing, earliest recorded Christian poems in English, composed by Cadman, a humble herdsman. So he was a very humble herdsman who is said to have been inspired by divine interventions to sing verses praising God. So you can see that a kind of religious themes are there in such type of poems or the poetry. When it comes to the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, so a collection of historical record, they portray the history of Anglo-Saxons. It provides valuable insight into the political events of the time as well as culture and social developments. Now see students, most of the time we talked about, when it comes to the literature, they are about heroism, they are talking about their culture, they are talking about their social development, they are talking about wars. So let's see in detail that what kind of themes we can find in Anglo-Saxons literature. First, heroism and warfare. We just discussed that the Anglo-Saxons, they were a kind of warriors, great warriors. So most of the time they talked about war and they praised war, and they praised their heroes, those who fight, the enemies. Works like Beowulf emphasizes, works like Beowulf emphasize the warrior culture. So the warrior culture means emphasize, appreciate the warrior culture, appreciate their warriors who are very strong and loyal, celebrating bravery and loyalty, like their heroes who fight are brave as well as loyal, and the heroes battle against faith, against you can say his own faith, often referred to as weird, right? So this was all about themes related to warfare and themes related to appreciating the heroes. When it comes to faith and transience, so the belief in faith and the fleeting nature of life is evident. Characters often accepting their faith with stoic courage. Now, faith and transience nature means transience in a sense you can say a very short-lived time. कि बहुत ही मुख्तसर वक्त दुनिया में जो आपका होता है. So their heroes who used to fight, they were very okay with their fate. कि whatever has been decided for them, they were very courageous to accept that. So in the poem, in the literature, especially Anglo-Saxon, you can find faith and transience nature of literature, or the people are definitely particularly it's all about warriors. So the warriors most were kind of very religious warriors. Because of Christianity, the theme is a bit not a bit but mostly it is religious as well. Then you can find themes of exile and isolation in Anglo-Saxon. Many poems such as The Wanderer and The Seafarer explore the pain of exile, that if someone has been sent out of you can say his tribe or his land, so definitely in these poems we can find the pain, or they they were very hard, they were very, you can say the brutal nature of exile can be seen in such poem, the harshness of nature and the loneliness of being cut off from one's kin. Like for example, if someone is exiled, definitely exiled means जलावतन करना जिसको हम कहते हैं. So if someone is exiled from his kinship group, so definitely miss it. So that is again about the loneliness and the harshness of such type of livings. When it comes to poetic form and style, that in which form they used to write poetry. just because we are talking about poems, okay, we are not saying that Anglo-Saxon's novel or Anglo-Saxon plays or drama, we are particularly talking about poems. Then you can find alliteration. Now what is alliteration? It is a figure of speech which has, repetition of initial consonant sound. Initial consonant sound की repetition जहाँ पे होती है, you can call it alliteration. Now the repetition of initial consonant sound in a line giving the poetry its rhythm. He saw the sea, the sweeping waves. He saw the sea, the sweeping CSSS. You can say alliteration, repetition of consonant sound. In English we have vowels as well as consonant, right? So whenever it comes to alliteration, it is about repetition of consonant sounds. Then we have, when it comes to poetic forms, we have kinnings. And what is meant by kinnings? It is a compound expression used to describe something indirectly. For example, if you want to describe something indirectly, you can say that किधे एक नंबर की चुड़ैल है, तो that चुड़ैल is an indirect way to describe a beautiful lady, right? Okay. Now see how they used kinnings in their literature. Now see, compound expression used to describe something indirectly, not directly. For example, they used whale road. Whale road उन्होंने अपने literature में use किया, which means the sea. So indirect description of the sea, which is whale road. Then they used battle sweat. Now battle sweat again refers to the blood, that वो जंग का पसीना क्या होगा, जंगी पसीना, आई डोंट नो, आप लोग मुझे फिक्स कर दें. सो बैटल स्वेट मीन्स टू, इट रेफर्स टू द ब्लड. तो डेफिनेटली किनिंग्स का मतलब क्या है? व्हेन यू आर इनडायरेक्टली टेलिंग अबाउट समथिंग. देन वी हैव सिजोरा. अब सिजोरा किस फॉर्म ऑफ द राइटिंग को कहते हैं? देखो, ए पॉज और ए ब्रेक इन द मिडल ऑफ द लाइन, often used to create rhythm or emphasize the duality in the themes such as life and death. Most of the time when they talked about, life and death in their literature, they used to use caesura, and which means having pause. For example, you are continuously reading something and then you are having pause. Whenever it comes to poetry, we will have examples on it, so you will understand. Then they had, elegiac tone. Why this sad tone? Because many Anglo-Saxon poems have mournful or reflective tone. The reason is they were all about battles, they were all about wars, the literature is all about, loneliness, about exile. So definitely there the tone, you can say the elegiac tone is, or the sad tone is acceptable, often contemplating loss, death and transient nature of life. So it is related to loss, it is related to death and the transient nature of life. And when it comes to these terms, कि एक चीज़ आपसे खो भी गया, एक चीज़ आप मर भी गए, और ट्रांजिएंट जो कि बहुत ही मुख्तसर लाइफ है आपकी, तो आपका टोन जो है एलर्जिक तो होगा ही, आप खफा तो होगे, जिसको हम कहते हैं मर्सिया. आई थिंक इफ़ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, इफ़ आई एम रॉन्ग देन टेल मी. ओके. Then we are talking about oral tradition. Now see students, oral tradition and storytelling. क्यों? Anglo-Saxon literature was rooted deeply in oral tradition. They used to sing it, or they used to, practice it before writing it. Skilled poets known as Aescopes recited stories of heroic deeds, legends and historical events in the royal palaces. Royal palaces means those their kings. तो उनके महलात में क्या कहते हैं? पैलेस को महल कहते हैं, और पैलेसेस को क्या कहेंगे? पता नहीं. महलात वो जो बहुत सारे होते हैं, आई डोंट नो, सॉरी. अब जो पैलेसेस हैं उसके अंदर जब ये पोइट्स जाते थे तो क्या करते थे? क्या रिसाइट ये करते थे? व्हाट दे यूज्ड टू सिंग? हीरोइक डीड्स, about their legends, about their historical events in the royal palaces. वहाँ पे ये बातें नहीं होती थी, तुम्हारी काली काली जुल्फ़ें और झील जैसी आंखें, क्या होता है आजकल की शायरियों में या मॉडर्न टाइम की उसमें. तो दे यूज टू अप्रिशिएट देयर वॉरियर्स, वो अपने हीरोज़ की तारीफ़ करते थे, वो ब्रेवरी की बात करते थे, राइट. तो उनको आंखों की तलवार से कोई मतलब नहीं था, उनको वो जंग के अंदर जो तलवार निकाल के लड़ते थे वो उनका उनसे मतलब था. These oral traditions were eventually transcribed into manuscript by Christian monks. तो ये जो oral tradition है वो convert कैसे हुई? Christian monk ने क्या किया? उसको preserve किया, लिखना शुरू किया, preserving them for future generations, जो आजकल हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि 21st century में बैठ के हम ओल्ड इंग्लिश को डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. तो it is just because of these Christian monks or the priest आप कह सकते हो, इनकी वजह से, because वो जो oral tradition था उसको इन लोगों ने preserve किया थ्रू रिटन। तो मोस्टली इनका मकसद ये नहीं होता था कि चलो यार आज रात सोचते हैं, लिखते हैं और फिर उसको महल में जाके पढ़ लेंगे या फिर एक गैदरिंग में पढ़ेंगे। नहीं, इनके मकसद में ये चीज़ लिखना वॉज नॉट देयर यू कैन से एम। तो वो पढ़ते थे या फिर उसको सिंगिंग होती थी, गाया जाता था। लेकिन बाद में जो है ओरल ट्रेडिशन को ट्रांसक्राइब किया गया मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स के अंदर बाय क्रिश्चियन मॉन्क्स, जो कि प्रिजर्व की गई फ्यूचर जनरेशन के लिए, जो आगे जाके हम पढ़ेंगे कि एंग्लो सेक्शंस ऐसे थे। स्टिल वी आर स्टडीइंग इट, राइट। देन इट कम्स टू एंड ऑफ एंग्लो सेक्शन एरा, कि ये एरा एंड कैसे हुआ। हमने इसका सोशल पॉलिटिकल सब कुछ डिस्कस किया, तो एंड ये कैसे हुआ। द एंग्लो सेक्शन एरा एंडेड इन द ईयर 1066, रिमेंबर द डेट, विद द नॉर्मन कॉन्क्वेस्ट। जैसे ये लोग फॉल ऑफ रोम के बाद आए थे, रोमन एम्पायर के बाद आए थे 5th सेंचुरी के अंदर, उसी तरीके से नॉर्मन कन्क्वेस्ट जो हम अगले क्लास में एंग्लो नॉर्मन के अंदर पढ़ेंगे कि नॉर्मन कौन थे। लेकिन फ़िलहाल आप इतना समझो कि व्हेन दे केम, उन्होंने जब कनकर किया इंग्लैंड को या फिर ब्रिटेन को, एट दैट टाइम इट वॉज द एंड ऑफ एंग्लो सैक्सन एरा। विलियम द कनकरर डिफीटेड किंग हॉरोल्ड एट द बैटल ऑफ हैस्टिंग्स। तो ये जो बैटल ऑफ हैस्टिंग्स है, इसमें विलियम द कनकरर किसका था, ये नॉर्मन बंदा था, ठीक है। ये विलियम द कनकरर ने इसको किसको डिफीट किया, किंग हॉरोल्ड को डिफीट किया बैटल ऑफ हैस्टिंग्स के अंदर, और जहाँ से इनका एरा एंड हुआ। The event led to significant changes in the English language and culture, making the beginning of Middle English period. तो ये जो आगे हम पढ़ेंगे Middle English period को पढ़ेंगे, जो उसका स्टार्ट जो है नॉर्मन के कन्क्वेस्ट से होता है, जब नॉर्मन जीत गए और नॉर्मन्स ने किंग कौन था, एंग्लो सैक्सन का आखिरी किंग जो था, इट वॉज हारोल्ड, उसको हराया। कहाँ पे हराया, बैटल ऑफ हैस्टिंग्स के अंदर उसको हराया, एंड मार्क्ड द बिगिनिंग ऑफ मिडल इंग्लिश period. So student, it was all about Anglo-Saxon era. We discussed about the literature, then specifically English literature. Mostly जो बातें हमने की historical context, जस्ट उसको एक रिवीजन दे देते हैं। जहाँ पे हमने लिटरेचर की बात की थी, हमने कहा कोई भी रिटन या स्पोकन वर्ड्स जो आपकी सोसाइटी को, जो आपके ख्यालात को, आपके आइडियाज़ को बयान करे, तो वो लिटरेचर है, वो अदब है। फिर इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में हमने बात की, वो सारा कुछ स्पेसिफिकली इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में लिखा जाता है। जो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में लिखी गई चीज़ है उसको इंग्लिश लिटरेचर कहेंगे, चाहे वो पोएम्स है, चाहे वो कोई ड्रामा से, नॉवेल्स हैं, एसेस हैं, आर्टिकल्स हैं। फिर हमने बात की ओरिजिन ऑफ लैंग्वेज की, कि इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज की जो ओरिजिन है वो 5th सेंचुरी से स्टार्ट हुई, क्योंकि एंग्लो सैक्सन जब ब्रिटेन आ गए तो स्टार्ट में इसको एंग्लो सैक्सन कहा जाता था, इनकी जो लैंग्वेज थी। और ये जो लैंग्वेज है ये लैटिन से, ये नॉर्थ से, जो उस टाइम के लोग दे वर लिविंग देयर, उनसे इन्फ्लुएंस भी बहुत ज़्यादा हुआ। उसके बाद हमने हिस्टोरिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट के अंदर हमने डिस्कस किया कि एंग्लो सैक्सन जो थे वो किंगशिप ग्रुप में रहते थे। ये जब आए तो ये डिफरेंट ट्राइब था एंग्लो सैक्सन का, कि एक ये ट्राइब है, दूसरा है, तीसरा है, चौथा है। तो वो ट्राइब्स जो थे उनके अपने अपने किंग्स होते थे। इनकी जो सोसाइटी थी वो सोर्स ऑफ इनकम, आई वुड से दैट वाज एग्रीकल्चर। ये खेती बाड़ी करते थे, तो उनका सोर्स ऑफ इनकम या पैसा या खाना जो आता था वो एग्रीकल्चर से आता था। जहाँ तक इनके रिलीजन की बात की जाए तो स्टार्ट में देवर पैगन, और एंड में क्या हो गया, ये क्रिश्चियनिटी में कन्वर्ट हो गए, क्योंकि क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज आना शुरू हो गए। उन्होंने क्रिश्चियनिटी की तबलीग की तो ये क्रिश्चियनिटी की तरफ चले गए। फिर जब इसकी सोशल और पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर की हमने बात की तो कंपनसेट ये करते थे, आपका जो नुकसान हुआ इसका भी वही नुकसान होगा, मतलब इस तरीके से कंपनसेशन उसकी होती थी। उसके बाद जो था ये लोग जो थे हमेशा किंगशिप ग्रुप में रहते थे और एग्रीकल्चर कम्युनिटी का हिस्सा थे। चले, ये तो हमने डिस्कस किया। फिर क्रिश्चियनिटी का भी मैंने आप लोगों को बताया। जब बेसिकली लिटरेचर की बात आ जाए तो इनके लिटरेचर के अंदर हमें हीरोइज़म, हमें लॉयलिटी के थीम्स मिलते हैं, हमें वॉर के थीम्स मिलते हैं, हमें अप्रिसिएशन के थीम्स मिलते हैं, जब ये अपने हीरोज़ को अप्रिशिएट करते हैं। हमें एग्जाइल की वजह से सैड टोन नज़र आता है, उसके बारे में बात होती है कि पेन क्या है, शॉर्ट जो ट्रांजिएंट्स नेचर ऑफ लाइफ है उसके बारे में बात होती है। तो मोस्टली इन्होंने अपने सोसाइटी को, अपने वॉरियर्स को, अपने कबीले को, इन चीज़ों को डिस्कस किया। सो दिस इज़ हाउ। और एंड कैसे हुआ, एंड ऐसे हुआ जब 1066 के अंदर क्या था 1066 के अंदर जब नॉर्मन कन्क्वेस्ट हुआ, नॉर्मन कन्क्वेस्ट इन द सेंस कि विलियम द कनकरर जो नॉर्मन का था उसने डिफीट किया किंग हारोल्ड को, और हारोल्ड कौन था, द लास्ट किंग ऑफ एंग्लो सैक्सन एरा था, और उसको बैटल ऑफ हेस्टिंग्स में हराया, और हराने के बाद मिडिल इंग्लिश पीरियड का वहाँ से स्टार्ट हुआ, जो कि हम नेक्स्ट क्लास में पढ़ेंगे. थैंक यू सो मच स्टूडेंट, इट वॉज ऑल अबाउट एंग्लो सैक्सन एरा.